All right, we ready? All right. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you had a good time last night. Las Vegas, I did. I'd like to thank OSG Billing and Quality One for their kind birthday party last night. I hope everyone had a good time. I hope you got some breakfast now and some coffee and you're fully caffeinated, ready to go. I want to take this opportunity to introduce our new chairman of our board. We had a meeting yesterday. We had an election, and the vice chairman, Michael Pryor, is now the chairman of the board, or CCA. Hugh Mina turned over the reins yesterday at the board meeting, and I think Hugh's out here. And again, I'd like to thank Hugh for all his leadership, and the fact that he's going to remain as officer of the association is a benefit to all of us. So let's give it up for Michael and Hugh. I'll let you take the stage.
Thanks, Steve. As you can tell, I didn't try to sing last night like Steve, so my voice is in a little better shape. And I don't know if thanks to OSG and Quality One is appropriate, since they've certainly put a dent in the early morning arrivals today. But to those of you who've come, we appreciate it. There's a good panel coming up, so it's good to see. Well, first, I'd like to thank the members who are here, which I hope is most of you, for your trust in me and electing me to serve as your chairman for the next year. I will do everything I can to earn that trust, and one of the things I said to the board yesterday is just remember it's your organization. We're just kind of facilitators on the board and in the officers of the organization. So please get involved. Reach out if you need. If you need something, if you have questions, just reach out to us. Reach out to Steve and his team. And a lot of you are, heavily involved. I saw. I was chair of the events committee, which meant I stood aside and watched a lot of people work very hard, from both associate members and carrier members, putting on this convention and other events, and I think they, put a tremendous amount of work into it. So since I'm just leaving that post, I think it'd be appropriate if we give a round of applause to everybody who put in that work. And next, I want to reiterate the thanks for Hugh Mina. I mean, Hugh really was instrumental in what was a fantastic year for the association in terms of forward movement. Hugh really brought an intense focus to the job. I mean, he really wanted the organization to aim very high on the policy front, be very active. I think we had a lot of very nice wins on the policy side. Hugh will be the first to say, not enough. We need a lot more, and I think we all agree. But there was a lot of progress, and I think it owes a lot to his leadership in focusing people in the whole organization on the objective and aiming very high. So thank you, Hugh. And I know he's going to be promised not to go off into the sunset. He's going to be around to continue to support and prod and push, which is very much needed. Secondly, I think we should also acknowledge, the advocacy for the carriers is first and foremost. We need some wins in order to remain healthy and in order to grow and thrive, and I think that will help everyone, the vendor community as well. But I don't think we should forget also to note, what Steve and his team have done in terms of the health of the organization. The organization is in great financial health. It's grown the resources. You can look at this convention and the other events. It just gets better every time. And if you haven't gone around and met them, you should meet the team at RCA. Steve really has hired a great group of people with a can-do attitude. So, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm expecting great things in the year to come. So lastly, before I go, I know you won't have too much patience for speeches today, but I think that we are on this policy side. If I just can touch on it for a second, we We really have, a few key issues that we need to work very hard in the coming year. We're working very hard on now. That's spectrum policy, access to spectrum, interoperability. Without that, access to spectrum is not worth a whole lot. And there's other issues like the mobility funds. Most of us were not too happy with the non-technology neutral decision that came down on USF, and I think we're going to continue to scrap for the wireless community's fair share of that. So thanks again, and thanks also to all the exhibitors, the vendors who have exhibited. It's a great showing, and look forward to a good last day at this convention.
Thank you, Michael. We're very appreciative of the board's involvement, and we look forward to a very active year under your leadership. Okay, now let's get into this morning's first keynote session. Michael Bayle, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of ESPN. Michael's responsible for developing and managing all aspects of ESPN's mobile strategy and execution, including content production, programming, publishing, and every ESPN mobile platform. Prior to ESPN, he served as Vice President of Monetization and Marketing at Amobi, a leading market developer. He was also Senior Director of Global Mobile Monetization for Yahoo. That's a tough one. This morning, he'll be sharing some of his thoughts on ESPN's mobile strategy and how our wireless carriers fit into the game plan. So let's hear it from Michael. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Excellent. So just to set up the context for my comments this morning, I wanted to play a short video, and I think I need the help. Oop.
It's great to be a fan, never knowing what's coming next. Waiting for the game to crown a hero or GOAT. Hoping for reality to have a fairy tale ending. We watch because we are sports, and it is us.
The 2011 winner of the Heisman Trophy is RG3! Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first play of overtime.
Derek Jeter has done it! Oh, what a way to join the 3,000 hit club!
Anthony Robles is a national champion. Rapinoe gets a crossing. It's towards one man. Oh, can you believe it?
Unforgettable. Grand Slam final.
Sports have a hold on us, compelling us to follow anytime, anywhere. We connect because we don't want to miss a moment and need to share our passion. There are no boundaries to being a sports fan. Only new beginnings.
So I intentionally didn't include Monday Night Football clips because I heard some of you might be Green Bay Packer fans. Sports and mobility is just a unique combination, I think, that play so well together. When you think about sports, if you're truly a fan, especially compared to maybe 5, 10 years ago, certainly, it isn't something you can delay. You have to watch it live. And by nature now, with social media in particular, if you dare try to delay it and you record it and want to watch in the comfort of your own home later, you're at risk. I think the Olympics have proven that. You're at risk of having spoilers. You're at risk of finding out the outcome. So much so then you actually turn off your phone. You turn off your communication vehicle. So we know our fans, and what I'll spend some time today talking to you about is the psychology and the day in the life of a sports fan on mobile. They want that content, and they want it live. And it's a privileged position to be at ESPN, working with partners like yourself to get our content before them. Our goal is to serve sports fans anytime and anywhere. And walking through what I'll talk about today, the mobile landscape probably will go right through. Spend a little bit of time on what we're focused on, and then give some insight vis-a-vis a study we've done with Nielsen, where we actually are metering how people consume content on their mobile devices and what else they're doing, which has some surprising results. Mobile, this is very, very pedantic for this audience, of course, but when we look at it internally, we see metrics from then, even 3 years ago, maybe 40% of consumption of our content was via BlackBerry, to now that particular device having less than double digit. Just a massive transformation to, of course, smartphones. And in particular, smartphones are over-indexing with our audience. While it's a 50-50 split in terms of the average sales today, smartphones and feature phones, when it comes to ESPN content, and perhaps because of the multimedia elements of it, and also the on-demand requirements of it, we see a 75% skew of our audience derived via smartphones, and yet that is a composition of almost 95% of our content. So we do work with any device, and we leave no fan behind. We send close to 2 billion alerts to 12 million unique users across the United States on any given month. So we're quite cognizant that we want to make sure we work across all modality, but even that text messaging environment, which gives live scoring updates and live content updates, we're trying to utilize to invoke access to what we know fans want, which is the content that's rich, illustrious, and very video-centric. Some interesting numbers that, to put in perspective why ESPN looks at mobile so importantly to our network. There are about 102 million mobile web and app users in the United States. To put in perspective, ESPN, the flagship brand you're familiar, reaches 90 million unique users in terms of our television programming and households in America. To put in perspective, of the 50 different networks that we operate globally, both television and digital, ESPN1 is the flagship. ESPN2 is the secondary in terms of the unique audience, as well as the average minute audience, which we'll talk a little bit about today. And then thirdly is ESPN.com. ESPN.com reaches about 60 million different users on a monthly basis. And lastly, but not the least important, is ESPN Mobile. ESPN Mobile has a unique audience aggregated on a monthly basis of close to 30 million users. And that puts it as fourth. So it is among the strongest growing entities within the company, and it's something that we're looking at how we program first to the devices before we even think of the landscape of our traditions and heritage. Some other stats that are kind of buried here, but in terms of the time spent on mobile apps, 129 billion minutes on a monthly basis. Mobile web is 29 billion, and then Facebook itself is 28 billion. And that's just the app. So there's strong interest in social media. We again believe that's fueled by sporting events, by photography, by live content. So how does that play into us? Well, we look at competitively, our competition isn't the usual suspects that you might suspect. It isn't the NFL, it isn't CBS, it isn't NBC. It's where do people spend their time? And what's been really surprising when we look at the data in a moment is they spend their time a lot on social media, a lot on gaming. And how we incorporate those trends into our programming for mobile is something different. It's something different than perhaps what we do in television and what we do in the world of the web, because we're able to use and leverage mobile as a composition device, not just a communication and broadcast device. So you're seeing this interaction happen really across the mobile environment faster than anyone could have expected, and how we embrace that and include that in all our screens is a big focal point for us at ESPN. So particular to us, I'm just going to walk you through numbers just in terms of how we approach the market, why we do what we do. We've been fortunate we have the leading sports app, which we'll talk about in a second, with ScoreCenter. By nature of its name, its intention is just to provide scores, to provide game casts, to allow you to watch that game if you're away from your office or away from your ability to watch on television live, or if we don't carry the game. So at least you can see the baseball scores, the hit by hit. It's a very popular product. We also enjoy the #1 sports mobile site. So we don't only just have apps, we definitely entertain interest across the ubiquity of devices, and we program m.espn.com, originally uniquely from the desktop version, and now more and more converging the newsroom, converging the broadcast approach, converging the headlines to be a very synonymous experience, irrespective of the screen you're on. So as you look at our endeavors, one of the flagships is the mobile environment. We see 9.4 million daily folks, 17 million times are coming to get our content, and that represents about 263 minutes. To put it in perspective, that's about 138,000 people on average on any given minute are accessing the content. And that number will become important in a moment, how I compare that to television and how I compare that to people who historically access our content on desktop. Similarly, with ScoreCenter, we have this is the new ScoreCenter with 1.5 million downloads, 66,000 people who come to us daily, 34 million minutes. And as we get broader, the real question is utility and usage. So this is our flagship ScoreCenter. This has 36 million downloads, 6.5 million daily unique. So about 16% of the folks who have this use it every day. And that stat is interesting. It's one of which we challenge ourselves, how do we improve upon that? But the reality is some sports fans are just tennis fans. Some sports fans are just football fans. Some sports fans are just basketball fans. So having a broad approach to encompass all scoring and all content, we're not as mystified when they don't come to us every day. And to that effect, we invest in categories that we think we can get better usage, and particularly where our DNA allows us to do this. One of the big American sports is college football. I think a lot of the regions represented in this room, absent professional teams, for all intents and purposes, your college teams, your local high school teams are professional teams. And that unbelievable passion and that fanaticism to get that content is something we're quite proud of. We broadcast close to 85% of the collegiate football game, so we dedicated ourselves to create an app uniquely to this content. Had 2.5 million downloads, but 1 million of them every single day use that content. So that's a 40% consumption rate versus the 16% we just spoke of. And what's unique about here and what fans expect, and Monday night kind of proved this with the NFL game, they want to see things. They want to see things. What happened? How did I challenge that game? What's going on? So within our rights portfolio, college is one of our strong points. Within any given major play, whether it's a 20-yard run, a scoring turnover, we're able to, within 3 seconds, get a clip from the studio and actually broadcast it on mobile. And that's a pretty amazing turnaround. And to be able to do that is quite a fundamental milestone within the company, to converge all efforts, to get to leverage the same group that creates the clips that we enjoy watching SportsCenter at night, say 11 p.m., and to utilize that in the mobile environment, to respect our rights with our partners in the various leagues, in particular the collegiate conferences, and to give fans a really compelling experience based on what they want. That includes video alerts, to be able to use the app, to open it elegantly, follow teams you want, but also to be impressed and to be surprised and to find discovery of content for content you may not have been familiar with before. And then lastly, and most exciting for us, is as we transition the expectation of television only being on the big screen. Some of our distribution partners include Xbox. If you weren't aware, Xbox, there are more fans now who use Xbox to watch TV than to play games. And similarly, about 1.5 years ago, the company strove to create a model working with our partners in common, the Verizons, the Comcasts, the Time Warners, who have cable environments. And as you continue to have a cable environment, to broadcast and to bring that content real time into the mobile environment. So ESPN Watch is our flagship product now, just been around about 15 to 18 months, has 12 million fans who have downloaded it. And on a given Saturday, back to that unique average audience, Saturday, of course, being one of our best days because of all the college environment games that we broadcast, 256,000, 250,000 people are simultaneously using it. And what's impressive here is that we have so many games that we're broadcasting. We can't put, however, all of them on the television. We have those 2 flagship channels, sometimes ESPNU, ESPN News. But with Watch ESPN, the fan can self-select. They can select whatever game they want, and it works on 3G, it works on 4G, it works on Wi-Fi. So it's a tremendous experience, and it's in response to what fans' expectations are. Lastly, fantasy. Fantasy is a unique American phenomena. 5 million people have downloaded 2.2, so you're seeing an increase in intensity of usage. And in this particular case, a very strong social habit, a very competitive environment. Monday night certainly helped prove that in terms of the number of emails we got back of the complaint of not just the play per se, but how it affected their leagues, how it affected the way that their setup was, and how they chose their roster that day. So why this is important to us and why we take a very resource-intensive strategy to accommodate both web and mobile web is in terms of getting that audience. So we have on the web about an average audience of 183,000 minutes for mobile web any given day. And if you look at our collective portfolio of apps, we have 256,000. So what's amazing is this combined audience is very competitive to most cable television programs. And it's how we go to market, how we bring our brands into the portfolio to reach our audiences. What's really exciting to share is the transformation of how content is created because of the way fans consume it. So 2 Sundays ago, now 3 Sundays ago, was the opening weekend of NFL. Of course, the launch game was on a Thursday. We saw some amazing statistics. For the first time ever, it was the largest audience ever collected at ESPN on our digital efforts. And for one of the first times, we saw a shift in usage. So we saw of the 904,000 people who were simultaneously average on any given minute using our digital products, both the PC and the mobile environments, the collective mobile environment outpaced the desktop. So I think we had 51% of our audience coming to our mobile environment and 49% using the traditional desktop. And that is a snowball effect we expect to continue to migrate. So it's imperative for us as a news organization to embrace this trend, to deliver our content, to acquire more rights, to satiate that fan, and to build what they want in mobile. So what do they want in mobile? We've partnered with Nielsen, and we looked at this particular swap in March Madness. So with March Madness in particular, there was 4 days from March 15 to 19 this year, and the consumption across the very first day was very app-centric. 83% of the folks who got their sports content were getting it from app, 17% from the web. As the 4 days increased and the totality and the opportunity to access content through web was more prevalent, you saw the numbers change slightly. What's interesting in terms of a competitive set is what are the number of apps you'd expect a sports fan to have downloaded? Anyone? A true sports fan? 5. When we polled people, we were very close. We saw 3 to 4 was what they answered to ourselves on the self-survey network. Looking at Nielsen's data, it's actually 1.3. And if you look at a real sports-heavy user, it's 1.8. Why this is meaningful? It's very competitive. It's imperative for us to work with partners for distribution. It's imperative for us to cooperate, to figure out unique programming by alliance, to be able to be that first thought, that first app. Because the minute you get in decimal points, you're at risk of not having the audience. What's fascinating to see is what they're doing. The average user, now this is iPhone data, spends close to an hour looking at content on apps and web. The average sports user indexes 41% higher. So they're using almost 90 minutes of their 24-hour day consuming mobile content on both apps and web. So the question to the audience is, this is a very diehard sports fan, spending 81 minutes on the device. What percentage do you think they're spending getting sports content? 20? 40. So we had expected between 30 and 40% for the sports, very strong person to want to get sports content. The reality is they're spending 8 minutes. And that number is interesting to us because the average person who comes to us spends close to 10 to 11 minutes using our content on a given day. So this data skews a little lesser than that, also further enhancing the desire for us to get before the fan to make sure we're first when they're consuming the content. So if they're only spending 10% of the 81 minutes is 8 minutes on sports content, what are they doing for the rest? What do you think is the number one area of content for which they're consuming? The games, social media? Games is actually social media. So 30 minutes goes into the social media portfolio. Twitter, Facebook, definitely being the dominant brands there. And so we dug a little deeper and look, what are they doing in a given day? And of course, they over-index towards prime time for sports. The red bars are sports. And then the rest of the content is intermixed with a strong environment with social media, and then intermixed with some weather, Wikipedia, some gaming. And then as we look on a given Sunday, the portfolio of access to the content is a little more distributed than the prime time, say, on a Thursday. And what's exciting for us is on a given Sunday, I said earlier, we had 904,000 individuals on a minute average basis engaging in our digital content. On a collective basis, we have over 10 million unique fans who come to us on Sunday. 10 million. What's most intriguing, we don't carry any programming on Sunday. If you're a big football fan, you know it's on NBC, it's on CBS, it's on Fox. So they're using us as the second screen to augment their experience while watching television on competitive networks, and they're leveraging us for content that's live during prime time, and of course they're doing other things, the distraction point. So our goal is to get them less distracted by using other environments, by incorporating that kind of content, whether it's gamification, social media. We've been much more cognizant in impregnating, quite frankly, Twitter and Facebook links and access into our apps and into our mobile web, so they don't have to leave us to go accomplish those interests. They can actually do that right within our content. So in our closing moments, I just want to talk a little bit what we're going forward. We're very focused on PC mobile web as a company, as I've mentioned, but we're broadening it, obviously, to apps. Video is very large to us, and gaming, as I just mentioned. And one of the biggest challenges we have, of course, is creating a business of this. We're very excited because we're ESPN. We work with a lot of partners, especially many of you in the room, to have you reach those audiences I just mentioned. But one of the challenges as a CMO is, how do I push product off the shelf? How do I push cars out of the lot? And one big question was, well, how do I measure this thing called mobile? So just 2 weeks ago, we announced something with ComScore and Arbitron to be able to take our content, which is now focused on ubiquity across all screens, including connected televisions, and measure it so that a CMO, a marketer, can have confidence knowing my investment across television, audio, digital, video, and mobile. Is it complementary? Is it a replacement? Is it additive? It's an open question, one of which we're embarking with the industry to accomplish, and very much excited to partner with companies like yourselves for distribution and access to get our content in the hands of your fans every day. So thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I thought you might actually replay that non-catch thing in the Seattle game, but I'm sure their friends from Green Bay was very, very appreciative that you didn't. So thank you very much. Great start to the morning. Next, we'll be hearing from Craig Stein. Craig is Executive Vice President of U.S. Regions for Broadband and Media at Ericsson. He's also a CCA board member and on the executive committee. Craig is a former Nortel executive who remains a thought leader in this wireless industry for Ericsson. He will be talking this morning about a very important topic, monetizing the cloud. And a lot of over-the-top innovations are shaking things up in the wireless industry, and these cloud innovations bring with them enormous potential, obviously. And Craig's going to discuss his thoughts about how we can make this a customer and how we can utilize these cloud services. And Craig, the podium's yours. Thank you.
Can you all hear me, hopefully? So Steve, one of the things that Ericsson has been fairly new to RCA, which is now CCA. And for lots of folks, it's still tough to say CCA just because of RCA. But I wanted to take a minute from all of us at Ericsson, really to congratulate you on the name change. And by the way, my team wanted me to put CCA very big so that I wouldn't say RCA. Make sure we get that correct.
You did a good job.
I know, it's very good. So we wanted to congratulate you on the uncompromising efforts that you've made in really fighting for a competitive carrier environment. And Ericsson's behind you guys 100%. So.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Great.
So what I want to take a few minutes today on is just talk a little bit about monetizing the cloud. But I want to start a little bit with some common heritage, because some of the things that we think today with regards to change as being very fast-paced. I'll start with a picture from back in 1883. 1883, yes. Lars Magnusson Ericsson thought that he could actually deliver telephone lines to buildings within Stockholm and do it at a lower price for multiple tenants. So they developed a 1,200-line gantry on top of a central office exchange, And within 2 years, by 1885, they were delivering 3,000 telephone lines in Stockholm, which was the largest in the world. And if you think about the pace of change that created back in the late 1800s, that's tremendous. And so one of the things that I would tell you is that change continues to outpace and will continue to outpace and has for over 100 years in our business. So as we head to what we call a network society, where everything will be connected. And when you take a look at what will be connected and is connected, the real question is, what are the drivers for that? And that's what we want to take a look at this morning. And along with that, exactly how will CCA members be able to compete in this particular environment? So we do know that video, we do know that peer-to-peer storage are really driving the growth. In fact, video will be five times what it is today as we go forward. So let me ask a question here. Actually, before I show this slide, I'll ask this question. How many people here go to bed at night and actually have their cell phone next to them when they go to bed? Yeah, look at that. How many people wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is look at your email? I get in trouble for this all the time, by the way. But how many people do that? How many people get in trouble for it? Just out of curiosity. Here you go. At least I'm not the only one. Take a look at this. This comes from Ericsson Consumer Labs. I think it's pretty interesting, and it really shows how mobility has integrated into our lives. 40% of the people wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is read their email or go onto their smartphone. That's pretty incredible. 50% go to bed with it next to them. The statistic, I guess, that surprises me a little bit, 32% of folks, they read email during dinner or do some type of email while they're eating dinner. I'm not allowed to do that at home. I'm sure most of you probably aren't either. But maybe this is the single folks, or people traveling. But I think that's kind of an interesting statistic. But it does show how integrated mobility is into our everyday life. So if we step back now, we take a look at, and I think this is a very important slide. In fact, this may be one of the most important things that we'll talk about. There's 3 areas that all of you have made investments in for probably 20 years in this space: voice, access, and messaging. And that's where our revenues have come from. That's the investment you've made. As we go forward, this is going to change. And this is where cloud and working together is going to be very important. It's cloud enterprise, cloud consumer, mobile advertising, hospitality, smart grid, all of these are going to be areas and applications that are going to work over our networks as we go forward. There are also areas that all of us probably don't have the money to invest in everything. So where our investments went before, we will not have the money as a group, and CCA members will not have the money as a group to build all of these applications. This is where you'll need to work together with others. And there's many ways to work in the cloud. The piece that I'm going to talk about today is really enterprise, and a piece where I feel you guys can go and actually own the customers. So you can work with analytics, work with APIs, you can partner with other folks, but you may not own that over-the-top customer. So I also believe there's an opportunity for you to own the customer. So let's take a look at over-the-top communications. Consumer adoption of over-the-top solutions has actually helped us with enterprise. As people travel, for example, there's a lot of industry adoption on VoIP, mobile VoIP. How many folks travel? 50% of the people travel about 20% of the time. How many people travel and use some type of a VoIP application to call home when you travel? Okay, so a few people do. Now how many of you use that same, maybe use it for voice if you call a customer? And some people do that as well. So this type of an industry adoption is allowing folks from a VoIP perspective to use this in the enterprise. Video communication, anybody heard of Google Hangouts before? Google Hangouts allows you to connect 9 members of your family, for example, and they also allow you to do YouTube. And now it's being used for business collaboration, and people are pushing a lot of communications through, such as Skype, through Azure, and it's connected into their Outlook products. And there are different types of cloud applications they're using for the enterprise. So let's take a look at an investment rationale. So if you look at the enterprise and enterprise communications, their IT investments have 3 goals: to ensure access to their customers, improve productivity and margins, and effectively serve customers. That's the IT investment rationale. And then if you address these goals, you can address them by managing mobility across their networks, unified communications and collaboration, cloud apps, M2M, and security. So what I want to do is take a couple minutes to talk to you about some cloud applications that Ericsson is actually doing. And it would seem like working in the cloud would be a very difficult thing to do. Also, I guess some people would say it's a little cloudy at times, so it's tough. But if you take a look at, we've got some applications that we launched this week here. One of them is a push-to-talk application, and that's in the cloud. Push-to-talk, for many folks, they'll say, yes, okay, push-to-talk, but it was always device-dependent. It's no longer device-dependent. So if you had a chance to stop by our booth while you were here this week, you'd actually see this particular product, and it's an Android application. There's a lot of different applications that will work on this, and the great thing about this particular application is you don't have to invest in it, you just pay on a per-subscriber basis. I believe that Ericsson, as a vendor, needs to work with our customers to help develop these type of applications so that you guys can monetize over your LTE links and own that customer. And I think that's going to be very important. Like I said, there's a lot of other ways you can monetize through the cloud. One of the things you're going to want is to own your customers. Here's another example of one. So this is a company called Ziosk. They actually have a product, a tabletop product that works in restaurants. And I'll give you an example of where I think you could actually do something. If you took that LTE link into a business and you actually connected the business and took away their T1 line, so for those of you that own landline businesses, sorry, hang on. But if you took away the T1 line with the LTE, and then you actually had our wireless PBX there, you put our Bel Air access point for Wi-Fi, you could actually deliver this product as well, and it would deliver you everything from menu. You have the ability to deliver sports scores. You can do mobile advertising on this device, games for the kids. It's a very cool device. It's all through the cloud. You'd actually be able to go in and have a restaurant package and could actually take that complete enterprise and actually have that enterprise be your customer at a higher ARPU than what you currently do today. So sure, it's a mindset shift, and you have to think a little differently, but this is where there's a lot of money to untap within the cloud. And it's a mix of cloud as well as what you can actually deliver. Another product that we're launching is a product called Business Communication Services, BCS. This particular product allows for Find Me, Follow Me, sits in the cloud, and also integrates in with your Microsoft Outlook. So it's a very cool business product, and this product coupled with, for example, push-to-talk, actually will give some efficiencies, workflow efficiencies that will allow you to go out and actually sell applications to the enterprise. So if you take a look at these three particular items, I'm going to show you a quick video of what else could happen. So I really like that video because what it really does, if you go all the way back to that first slide that I showed you and talked about the pace of change, it really shows you what we believe will be coming in the future. And I think as you take a look, and what I'd like to challenge everyone in this room, and Ericsson is going to be focused very much on cloud applications and cloud delivery as we go forward. I'd like to challenge everyone, and we want to help be a part of this. How do we help you take your workforce and add that enterprise sales ability to it? How do we help you sell in that platform and change the way you think? So we have a lot of different applications that we'll be putting in our cloud, and as we go forward, we look forward to hopefully working with you guys on all the different ways that you can monetize in the cloud. And as you saw in that last video, there's many, many things that we'll be able to do together that we can't even think of today. So, Steve?
Okay, excellent. That was very good. Appreciate it. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Craig. That was great. A very nice take on an interesting topic. If I may take a personal note, Craig's been one of those go-to members of the board. He's been his company is a strong supporter of CCA. Every time we've asked him to help us with the problem, they've been right there, front and center. I had the opportunity to go visit him at his facilities in Texas and got to see some of the neat things in their labs, and it is truly amazing where we're going, and we appreciate your support and involvement. Now, let's get to our next presenter here. Our next speaker this morning is Neil Capel. He's the CEO and founder of Sailthru, a technology and behavioral analytics company which began in 2008. And he's an entrepreneur and an engineer at heart, I think. Many of the leading publisher and e-commerce brands depend on Sailthru to use customer data to extend their subscribers' lifetime and engagement, and actually increase page throughs and drive clicks. So it's safe to say that Neil is not a stranger to data, especially big data. And today he'll be sharing with us some of his insights on how competitive carriers can use data to build customer loyalty, and how the mobile platform is changing new customers' demands, and where he may think mobile may actually enhance the customer experience. He was also named as one of the top 100 from the Silicon Valley publications, one of the top 100 influential technology leaders in New York City, which I thought was quite unusual. And New York City, you don't think of Silicon Valley in New York, but I think it works, right? So welcome. Thank you, Neil, for coming and sharing with us today.
Good morning, everyone. So when I was asked to come and speak at this conference, I kind of thought, well, what can I tell everyone that can leave them with ideas about how they can remain competitive, grow their businesses, and continue to evolve their businesses out? And I thought, well, how am I going to do that? I look at what we do for our customers, and we have a very unique view of what our customers are doing with their customers, because we provide a marketing platform that really enables them to reach the consumer on a one-to-one level. And I wanted to say, okay, well, if I can educate you in understanding the consumer, then you can go out and actually understand the consumer more so that you can know how to build out the business and build around that consumer. So to jump right in, I think we can all agree that consumer demand for mobile data is increasing massively. In fact, it's actually grown by 18,000%. I mean, that's one hell of a number. I love that number. I'd love to be able to say that was our revenue number, but it's a massive increase in consumer demand for mobile data. It just continues to increase. We know it's going to increase. I'm sure we've been talking about it a lot this conference. But really. Hello? Let's try that again. There we go. So the consumers are much more, more connected consumers, right? So if you look at the blue line, you have the consumers who access the mobile internet at least more than once a month. And it's massively increased, along with the smartphone ownership in the US. Expected in 2012, 53% of mobile users will have smartphones. You can really see the uptick is happening in the last 2 years, right? And so it's a massive uptick. This is where it's going. In fact, I'd love to know, and this is a very skewed audience, but is there anyone in the audience that doesn't actually have a smartphone? Don't be shy, because it would be interesting. I'm sure there's one person that's actually decided, I don't want a smartphone because I don't want to have to answer email when I'm on the go. All right. I think this is a skewed audience, but if you look at it, that in the next 5 years, everybody is going to have a smartphone. It's not, smartphone becomes something, it's just a phone. You have dumb phones for those, the older style, the old style phones, but everyone in the next 5 years will have a smartphone. And that's where we're going with the sort of the mobile aspect of everything. If you think about that, I mean, when you look at mobile data and mobile applications, everyone says, well, we've got web, we've got mobile, we've got desktop, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is my PC. It's a MacBook Air, it's tiny. When does this become mobile? I mean, this is essentially an iPad with a keyboard. So if the iPad's mobile, pretty much this. How many people use a desktop still today? A desktop machine, anyone? Okay, so a few of you, right? I mean, my sole machine is a laptop, and that's pretty much the mobile thing. Why is this not, there's a few of them now, but I mean, why is not pretty much all of them coming with a SIM card in them so that I can actually be online all the time? Because the other thing, and to the last presentation, everything happening in the cloud, I am downloading and uploading data all the time. I had my computer stolen 3 months ago. It didn't matter because nothing was on the damn machine. Everything was in the cloud. I had access to it. I just, I could remotely shut down the machine so that no one could get used to it, and I had everything that I needed. There was no backup. There was no continual sort of offline storage. I just had everything in the cloud. So the amount of data that we're consuming is only going to grow as more and more people, drift to that, and as we drift away from desktop machines, frankly, and it becomes so much more of that. In fact, I think in 2009, 1% of the internet traffic was mobile. Then I think right now we're at 12% of the global internet traffic is mobile traffic, right? So if you look at that, it's just going to increase, and that line of mobile to non-mobile is going to blur to the point where there really is just, traffic, data, Wi-Fi, 4G, whatever it is data coming in and out of essentially a machine that Sun envisaged ages ago, which was a very simple screw-in dumb terminal that you would actually use, and everything else would exist in the cloud. So it's finally coming to date. I think that, hold on, there we go. If you look at the smartphone adoption rates, 58% of US teen mobile users own a smartphone, so the teens are even, 58%, that's approaching. I think that's going to increase massively too. 74% of adults have a smartphone to back up that same thing that I said before. I think Larry Page said recently on TV that the first computer is going to be a mobile device for most kids these days, and I think he's right. I think it isn't going to be the PC. I mean, how many of your kids play with your iPhone? It's becoming that kind of a different technology, different spin of how we do everything, and kids are going to be on the mobile device first, and then they'll actually have their laptops, and I would say that they're never going to actually have desktops, frankly. Different age groups are going to use their phones and their mobile devices, their tablets, differently. And that's something we have to always remember. They're always going to use it differently, each and every one of them, both demographically, both users, age-wise, they're always going to use the systems differently, and we have to be uniquely adapt to that different use. There's going to be an increase in bring your own device. I'm sure that's been spoken a lot about. The bring your own device side of things. We're an organization of 100 people. We have everything from Androids to iPhones to all over the place. And I think that the bring your own device is only going to increase. There's a really interesting company. I think the app's called Divide, which is a very interesting thing that I'm seeing, which is literally a lockdown version where so you can have a bring your own device, but you can actually still have the enterprise control of a essentially virtual phone within the phone. And I think that bring your own device is only going to increase. So you're going to see much more of these smartphones going in increasing. So the top activities on mobile, we talked about this in the last couple of presentations. The top activities on mobile, still text is a massive massive part of that, 60%, 34% web, 30% email. That's going to shift, as always. It's going to keep shifting, and I think as you see that line blur, you're going to have more and more people. The text will reduce, I think. I mean, when I first moved over here from England, I used to text my wife all the time, well, my now wife, and I used to text her all the time. She's like, what the hell is this? And now everyone's using it. It's SMSs all over the place, but I think that will decrease. Web is always going to go up. Email's not going anywhere. Email is always going to be a component where people are involved and using their smartphones or email, as to the last point, that people checking their email from before they get up. I think someone said that some people will check their email 7 times before leaving their apartment in the morning on their smartphone. So I think that's it's a vast amount of addiction to that, and I think you'll probably find that most people's attention spans will dramatically reduce with that as well. Email's a really useful thing. Email is one of the most, it's a push mechanism. So it's not passive, as in you don't have to go online to go find anything. Email is being pushed at you, the user. So you're seeing that you're actually, as a marketer, you can actually reach the user and bring them back and actually engage them. So it becomes that sort of the place where you can go and get a user back and bring them back to the site. But it's not the only thing. It's about being able to be platform agnostic across the whole thing. You're seeing an increase of, I think, from last year, 10% increase in email engagement. I think last year it was at 20% of that shift. Now 30%, again, going to increase all the time. Video is becoming a massive part of online. Everyone's watching mobile. I never used to watch video on my cell phone. I do now. It's only becoming more increasing. I think what's really exciting to me is mobile shopping. That's where it's really happening. The point of sale is everywhere now. There is no single, place you can conduct a transaction with Square. You can conduct a transaction with other applications. It's become very easy to conduct a thing. I think eBay released something recently where they were saying that they were doing $275 per second of transactions. I mean, on their mobile device. So I mean, just in a 5-second pause, you're looking at $1,000. I mean, that's an awful lot of transactions that are happening from the mobile device. I think they sell about 9,000 cars a week from their mobile app. So people uploading and actually people purchasing. I mean, it's a crazy amount that's being conducted online. And I think commerce is really where the growth is, where you're going to see everything. It's just the mobile payment industry as a whole is growing. The 90%. One of the things to really realize is that 89% of mobile apps are free to download. And apps are really what draw people to a platform a lot of the time, right? It's the apps that you want to be able to use, and sometimes exist on Android, sometimes exist on iPhone. The apps are really a very big draw factor, and there's a hell of a lot of them, but they work very much on the aspect of being free and upgrading the user to a payment model if they can, if they're not supported by ad revenue. These are the apps. People are installing them. I forget the number. Some average number on iPhone installs are something like 120-odd apps per user, which is just, I mean, that's an awful lot of data that people are trying to find the apps and install onto their phones so that they can actually use them. So the apps that people download, they're going to change. The trends change. I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone knows about sort of the Google Maps aspect of the new iOS release. What's really driving this adoption, right? Well, it's the access to the apps. It's the access to the data too. So for our customers, we track an awful lot of data, the big data aspect, right? We track the frequency, the time of day, and this is across platform, right? This isn't just in app or on phone. It's about knowing when a user is conducting commerce, when a user is playing games, when a user is watching video. All of this data we're collecting for our customers so that we can make it actionable and make it so that we can actually push that through. So if you think about a lot of the marketers in history have always looked at demographic data. It's like, where do they live? What's their household income? All of this kind of data that they can actually use. It's difficult. It's an old style kind of data, and frankly, is not as effective as what you can actually get from psychographic data. So the data of knowing that a user consumes certain things, knowing that a user looks at handbags in the $2,000 range on eBay, but only ever purchases ones in the $300 range, it's much more effective data than knowing that they live in zip code 10014 with this household income. Because the user is you're inferring that data from that user's actual interactions. And so we're taking that data so that we can actually make that happen, but also you're seeing that the app stores are pushing products that are most trending, right? The app that's trending the most. They're selecting them, they're curating them, they're getting them out there. Those are the products that are being pushed out. And there's so many apps because it can be easy to sort of develop those and get them out. So that's really what's driving the adoption. So how do you build a really lasting relationship with your consumer, right, with the user? So that's what we do at Sailthru. We collect and generate the data, analyze the behavior so that we can create targeted messages. When I was, my dad was a greengrocer in England, which is, for the American side, is a deli that sells fruit and vegetables only, right? And he knew every single customer that walked in the door. And if he didn't know them, he got to know them immediately. And he made sure that they remembered him. And that enabled him to be competitive with the supermarkets that came in from America in the 80s into England. And he managed to remain competitive with them to the point where they wouldn't actually sell fruit and vegetables. And it was because he had the brand loyalty of his customers, and he had that interaction and that one-to-one consumption, one-to-one relationship. That's what we don't have in the digital world right now. That's what we don't have on mobile. We don't have on the web. We don't have in app. We don't have on tablet. It's because it is a digital world, and it's very hard to have that relationship. So that's where it's really coming down to, is how do you create that relationship? And you create that relationship by making sure that user is looked after, making sure that they're getting the most relevant content, the most relevant information at the click of a button as easy as possible. The consumer is bombarded with information right now, and it's about customizing all of that data and personalizing every interaction, especially on mobile. When people come to a website, and if it doesn't even load quickly, then they're going to move on. And the reason they move on is because it's not relevant, because the site wasn't quick enough. That's why Google used it as a massive PageRank score when they were looking at indexing sites. It's like if it didn't pop up, then you weren't relevant to the user because you weren't fast enough. And so on mobile, that's an even bigger problem. So customers have to be able to get their, the brands out there have to have fast websites, they have to have mobile-friendly websites, and they need to be able to push that out there so that they can, when a user goes to the site, it's immediate and they get going and they can get that data. So the bounce rates are much higher on mobile if they're slow. So again, more of the data side, more speed, as it were. It's about minimizing the clickstream of the user to get to conversion. And that's what it's really about. So if that user's trying to get to this information, you want to get them there as quickly as possible. You don't want multitudes of page views between that data set. And knowing the data of what they're using, what they've consumed in the past, is how you can drive that and get them to the right content quickly and efficiently. So knowing that they're a Packers fan, that you can put that content right there when they come to the site, rather than having to click a couple of links to get to it. You're able to customize it. So again, it's an awful lot of data. These apps, everyone is sending this data back over the carrier network. It's only going to increase, and it's the future of how we're going to do that. And so when it comes down to sort of closing remarks, as it were, understanding the consumer is key. Understanding your consumer, it's the consumer of the content. They're consuming brands, content, e-commerce, or everything happening on their mobile device all the time. That's what's going to help you distinguish yourselves and understand that what their needs are and how you can create and recognize the consumers as actual individuals, so that you can create a loyalty and a customer loyalty and maximize that ARPU for your customers, so that you can really have a very long-lasting lifetime value of those users. And that's by really providing the data sets and making the access to that data as easy as possible. Seamless transition to Wi-Fi, creating that kind of aspect, creating a ease of use for your users is the way to sort of really amaze them and get your customers to really be able to engage with everything they need as quickly as possible. And that's everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was all good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Big data. That's everybody's dream come true. It'll be a nightmare if we're not ready for it, right, Craig? Thank you very much. So let's move on to the next phase. We have a morning program, a roundtable discussion, and it will focus on the policy changes for competitive carriers. And we're going to have to do a little setup here. Just going to take a couple minutes, and let's see if we can get the crew in here to move the chairs up. We're going to take about 2 minutes, and then we're going to be able to get going. And I'll ask if Dan Meyer is in the room. We can we'll get him up here as soon as we get the stage set up. Just give us a couple minutes. Be right at it. Craig. Oh. Okay, may I have your attention? I think we're all set up. I'd give you just 30 seconds to catch your seats. Yeah, get you another cup of coffee. We've had a really interesting first three speakers, and I really appreciate the fact that the group is still hanging in there. Vegas can be brutal sometimes, can't it? Yeah, come on in the back. Come on, cease and desist conversations. Come on down, sit down. We got to get going. We've got a great panel here. I think the stage is all set up now. Dan is all set up. Dan is the editor-in-chief of RCR Wireless News, a strategic partner of CCA. We've enjoyed our partnership. Jeff and Dan all are well-known faces around the CCA activities and events. And Dan started at RCR Wireless News in 1999, covering wireless carriers and wireless technologies. And today, as editor, he oversees editorial direction, reports on news from the wireless industry, provides opinion stories, areas of industry concern, and you may know him also by the Worst of the Week column that he runs. You don't want to be in Dan's Worst of the Week column if you can avoid it. But he's truly one of the experts and has been around this industry for a long time, and everyone looks to him for his expertise and his knowledge of what's next. So we're going to let Dan introduce his own panel, and I'll turn the activities over to Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief, RCR Wireless.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Well, I definitely want to thank everyone for sticking around for this panel. I think it'll be a good panel. The topic, obviously, is some policy issues and kind of a focus on the 96 Act and perhaps changes or anything that some of our panel members might be looking forward to there. So before we start off, I want to let everybody kind of introduce themselves on the panel so you guys have an idea of who we have up here before we dig into some of these topics. I know we're also trying to keep on time, so I'll try to speak as fast as possible, which I'm really good at. So if you can't understand me, if I mumble too much, I apologize now, but we'll try to keep it going pretty fast. So so I'll let our panel members introduce themselves, and we'll start on this side here.
Russ Merbeth with Cricket Wireless, Vice President of Government Affairs, been with the company for about 2.5 years. I came over from the wireline side, and one of the first panels one of the first meetings I went to was about the spectrum crunch, and they said, what do you think about how we're going to resolve this spectrum crunch? And I said, if I'd known there was a spectrum crunch, I would have stayed in the wireline side. So anyway, it's good to be here.
They got you with that one. That's pretty good. Very good. All right. And now we have a substitute here. So
Josh Rowland, not Kathleen Ham, obviously. T-Mobile Government Affairs Office. I've been with T-Mobile for about 2 years, and before that I was in private practice at a law firm in D.C. And before that, I actually worked for Tom Shagru, who's my current boss at the FCC, as a legal advisor in the Wireless Bureau. So I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. All right.
I'm Chuck Willis, and I'm with Bluegrass Sailor, and I will kind of balance out. I'll be the slow speech guy. You can be the fast speech guy. Together, we can make average speech. I've been with Bluegrass Sailor for 15 years. Before that, I was with AT&T for 25 years. So been around the business for a long time.
Yeah, very good. All right. Larry?
And Larry Lueck with Nsight, and which is the parent company, obviously, of Cellcom and a number of other entities. And I'm the associate legal counsel there. I've been with them for almost 20 years.
Very good. Thanks, Larry. All right. Thanks, everyone, for introducing yourselves there. And so the plan will be, we're going to touch on a couple of topics initially, looking at the 96 Telecom Act, go into some regulatory issues ongoing. Then we'll probably go a little bit into the device issues. I know CCA has a lot of pet projects they've been working on the regulatory side, so we'll touch on a few of those topics, get some insight from you guys on that. Perhaps some network stuff as well at some point, too, some spectrum issues. That's always a big topic, too. So that'll be the kind of general flow for this. So to kick it off, we'll kind of, I guess, start with the title to the panel, looking at the 96 Act. And I guess maybe start on this side here, Russ. I guess, your general view of the 96 Act and how it's been implemented over the years. Has it served its purpose, or is it past its due date? I mean, there's been talk for years about a possible revision of that. There's been some changes kind of thrown around. I guess what's your general view of the Act as it was written initially, and kind of how it's played out in the telecom space, specifically wireless space, over the past 16 years now, I guess.
Obviously a landmark piece of legislation, long time coming. I guess it was the first attempt to redo telecommunications laws in this country in, I don't know, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
I think it was a tremendously effective piece of legislation. It set the stage for a lot of game-changing innovation in the industry on the wireline and the wireless side. You know, the implementation of these things is really where the rubber meets the road. And as with any huge piece of legislation, you know, there were some things that came off very well through the regulatory process of implementation, and there were some things that, you know, it feels like even today have not yet been fully ironed out. You know, there are still battles going on between the big two and a lot of other folks. Again, both wireline and wireless. But I think it was a tremendously effective piece of legislation. It's hard to imagine that there's something comprehensive like that could or would be done again. So the idea of a big rewrite of the '96 Act, I think, is very intriguing. Obviously, if the committee and the subcommittee really want to do something comprehensive, we're all going to have to be very, very engaged. And, you know, I think the challenge for this community in terms of engagement has always been we tend to look at the FCC as where the action is and where the focus ought to be. And the fact of the matter is, if you're rewriting legislation as important as the '96 Telecom Act, a lot of the upfront work needs to be done with Congress. And that's a challenge for this community to fully engage. You know, trade associations have lots of functions in Washington. Oftentimes they serve as a foil, they serve as a screen. They do a lot of things that comprehensively that could not be done or are done best by an association as opposed to the individual members. But on something like this, it's kind of an all hands on deck if it were to come to pass. And you know, I think everybody, all the carriers and the community, the ecosystem that surrounds the carriers really needs to step up.
I mean, is it, I don't want everybody else to talk to you about that, but I mean, is it now, was '96 a simpler time where you could do these things? Is now just, you even thought of it, ridiculous?
Well, I don't know that it's ridiculous. It does feel like it's a more complicated political environment now to try to do something like this, but you know, it's hard to say.
Gotcha. Okay.
If that's really fair.
Yeah,
I would just add that I don't think we should really be talking about abandoning the provisions of the Act. I think the Act, as Russ said, you know, has created monumental changes in our industry. The '93 Act, actually, and the '96 Act, bringing the auction authority, paving the way for the first spectrum auctions, preempting state rate and entry regulation, things like that. Obviously, we need to continue. Zoning restrictions, you know, limits on zoning restrictions. I think in terms of a rewrite or kind of adding to the Act, you need to think of what the important issues are. And I think, obviously, for us, it's spectrum. It's a key issue. And so I think focusing on what the key issues are, you know, ways to tinker with the Act, and I think really making spectrum available for competing carriers is one of the key issues. So,
Chuck.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to take it maybe back a little further than that even, because, you know, I think it almost goes back to divestiture and what that was about. And, you know, that was about a monopoly, unleashing market power on the industry and stifling competition in the industry. And I don't know that things have changed a whole lot since then. You know, take a look at it, you know, at divestiture, created 7 RBOCs, and now we've got down to 2 or 3 with Southwestern Bell, getting Ameritech and Bell South, and, you know, everything has kind of come back together. And, you know, I think, you know, maybe as opposed to a rewrite of the Telecommunications Act, maybe we need to look at a second divestiture. Because if you take a look at it, you know, the local exchange business and the long distance business as it was then, if that was a problem, you know, then the local exchange business and long distance on steroids or the cellular business creates even a more difficult situation. You know, and you know, maybe we need to look at a second divestiture.
Interesting. All right, Larry.
Yeah, I would say, you know, it's always easier in hindsight to look back at an act and say, sure, it was successful or failed. I mean, I think One of the successes that I think came out of it was the internet became essentially unregulated as the market expanded. It was in its infancy and it took off unregulated. And I think if we talk another Telecom Act rewrite, I guess I can't see that happening to the scope of what happened in '96. I don't think the issues are as large as that. I think there are very specific issues for each industry that we face, and you look at landline as a industry on the downslide. Will something happen there? I kind of doubt it. I think you'll see more specific things like spectrum be a specific one, and regulation like that. So I'd hate to see an act rewrite happen again where we start talking regulation.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I guys tapping into that then, and tapping into your guys' expertise on the front there. I mean, like Larry, what would be, from your point of view, if there was to be some sort of, not a rewrite, but some sort of change or whatever to, that needed to be done, what one specific topic would you want to see really addressed with some sort of alteration of that? I mean, for yourself and also for the company you represent too. I mean, what would you like to see as being?
Yeah, I think, the biggest challenge I see is that the FCC tends to be a reactive organization. Okay. Just by its very nature, regulatory is going to be reactive, not proactive. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest change I'd like to see is there be more, sort of self-regulation type stuff. You look at bill shock and usage notifications, stolen cell phones initiatives, things like that. Those all came about as industry, discussions and compromises and working with the FCC, not against them on these issues. So really any telecom rewrite or anything like that would have to address the regulatory environment with the FCC and get them to be more receptive to the industry. And then as far as like what is the one issue, spectrum certainly is the biggest issue that everyone will talk about. But from our perspective, it's got to be the smaller geographic blocks. I mean, there's absolutely the biggest failure recently was this nationwide 700 megahertz block. That was an absolute failure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Chuck,
well, I was thinking, if there's going to be a rewrite, where's the pressure going to come for a rewrite? And I think it's probably going to come from AT&T, mm-hmm. and it's going to probably be about AT&T trying to lessen the restraints on their ability to do acquisitions, whether it's acquisition of properties or acquisition of spectrum, or whatever those issues are. And I think it's going to be very important that we take our issues and inject them into that process as well, so that we're not strictly playing defense. We need an offensive approach to it, and interconnection, those types of issues are things that we need to press forward with.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would just say spectrum again, preserving or enhancing the FCC's authority to ensure a competitive marketplace, so that if and when new spectrum becomes available, making sure that all carriers have an equal shot at it. So I know in the Jobs Act, there was an affirmation of the FCC's authority to set eligibility restrictions in auctions, but I think when new auctions come to pass, there's going to be challenges to that, and I think legislation confirming that would be useful. I guess data roaming is also another issue that I think would be useful to be addressed. I think the oral argument went well last week, mm-hmm. and we're confident that the FCC's rule will be upheld, but if it weren't upheld, it would be certainly useful. Even if it is upheld, it would be useful to have more teeth to that rule and have the FCC's mm-hmm. authority be clearer in that front so that it could carry forward a data roaming rule that's as strong as the voice roaming rule.
Gotcha.
Right, I agree with all of that. I think, it's important to have an upfront wish list that's more than wishful, that is realistic, and that addresses the competitive issues that remain. I would point to the process being as important, though, as the issues. Mm-hmm. We're good at talking about the issues, but it's really going to take a lot of effort to get our issues embedded in the discussion and fully vetted and acted on.
And I would just add that it takes a lot of work. I mean, the two largest carriers have arsenals of people who are at work kind of already examining, I think, how the act could be rewritten, and mm-hmm. I think CCA can play a vital role in trying to push forward our agenda.
Yeah, and if I could just add on that too, I certainly see that as being one of the biggest challenges that will face us is we've got to present a united front on this issue. I mean, these aren't large carrier, small carrier issues. These are issues that affect us all. And the more united we are, the better off we'll be in getting our issues front and center.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Well, I don't want to stick too much on the regulatory side, but again, talking about some of the objects that CCA is looking at. You guys kind of mentioned roaming, interoperability, some of those issues that are, are pretty big for CCA, and I know for you guys as well. Which of these do you guys see, getting the most progress being made on in the near term, and which ones do you think are going to remain the most troublesome? I mean, where do you guys see some progress perhaps being made when it comes to data roaming, interoperability, device availability, spectrum issues? I mean, do you guys see some progress being made in some of those, and do you see some as just being a bit of a challenge? I'll check if...
Yeah, I think the major issue for us is interoperability, and kind of, it moves around to several fronts. One of those fronts is, it goes back into devices, the availability of devices to operate on a variety of spectrums, and then that links back into the spectrum issues as well. So.
Yeah. Anything that you guys seeing as being, or maybe Larry, I'll let you maybe start on that too before I throw another question out there. But.
Yeah, I would say, I look at device exclusivity and availability certainly as an issue that, we would hope the market can take care of that issue for us. So you look at the iPhone, it's software driven, it's not hardware driven, it's not the components that are put into it that make it exclusive to a carrier, it's just software driven, and here's the device, and you can make it work on your own network however you want to. That's really where that's got to go, is it's got to be software driven and not hardware driven. And then that device exclusivity kind of fades off a little bit.
Gotcha. I would say that in terms of progress having been made on an issue, we've been making progress on the spectrum issue, access to spectrum. There was a very intense, interesting period through the end of last year and into the first couple of months of this year on the Jobs Act. Trying to make sure that the FCC maintained the authority, or perhaps even could get its authority enhanced to structure auctions in a way that generate the widest dispersion of spectrum among the various players and entities in the market. And I think we made really good progress there. As a community, it was, again, one of those all-hands-on-deck kind of experiences. And if we do that, if we approach these issues that way, I think we will see success.
Right. I would just add that there are challenges, but there's also opportunities. I mean, just this week we've got the FCC moving forward with its incentive auction NPRM, which is going to be, I think, monumental in bringing new spectrum to our industry. And I think it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. I mean, I think our industry has to really work with the FCC, with the Hill, with broadcasters to make sure that broadcasters are on board with what is going to be happening. But, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to shape the auction rules, the service rules, the geographic license sizes. And so I think that's a positive thing.
Gotcha. Because of the reactive nature, you guys kind of mentioned that the FCC is kind of a reactive regulatory body. Because of their reactiveness, do you guys feel like it's more important, more than ever now, to really be more proactive in making sure that your point of view is out there while they're making these decisions? Or what things are happening, you guys have to be more aggressive in being able to make sure that, when things are happening, that your voice is part of that argument, more so than was in the past? Because again, like you said, the big two carriers are doing that on a daily basis, obviously. They're setting policy almost at this point. Do you guys feel like you need to be that much more aggressive because of how the FCC is reacting to those types of issues?
I think we're looking at two things. We're looking at the FCC and their role, and we're looking at Congress and their role. Yeah. And I think it's also important to realize that that Congress tends to be a compromise organization, and we need to have our issues as a part of the compromise. And so I think it's very important that, as was said earlier, that we get together on our issues. We have a united front on our issues, and our issues need to be a part of the compromise.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think as carriers we can achieve that, but it's not something that can be achieved from the sidelines. It takes aggressive, direct interaction, and that's something that I recognize as a challenge for a lot of the members of this association. Small outfits, leanly staffed, and But at the end of the day, we can't depend entirely on a trade association to carry all the water. The more of us that are engaged on the issues and engaging directly with members of Congress, the better off we're going to be on the other end of this process.
Gotcha. Larry kind of mentioned about the issue with new devices coming to the market and the challenge for a lot of small guys in getting devices. That's obviously been a problem, kind of amplified over the past several years because of certain devices coming to market, exclusive to some carriers. I mean, how do you guys view the current state of that device availability? When it comes to you guys being able to get that access to the latest devices. I mean, how important is it for you? I mean, and how can those challenges be changed? I mean, can you guys go to the device makers? I mean, is there something you guys can do to change the situation, or is it kind of, such a huge issue when it comes to just quantity that it becomes an issue that it's tough to challenge for a small carrier, even banding together for small carriers?
Yeah, it is a huge issue, and particularly with the new technology with LTE. Now we're right back into the soup again as far as getting the number of devices that we need. There's a big difference in having a device and having a fleet of devices. And I think we're in a situation where we have a device, which puts us in the business, but it still puts us at a competitive disadvantage.
Gotcha. I don't know, Larry, if you got any more. I know you kind of already talked a little bit about it, but.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. We want the chance to show our competitive advantage over the other carriers, certainly through customer service and other things like that. So if we're restricted from a device that a customer really wants, that certainly does impact us. So we certainly would, if Congress is the right answer, the FCC is the right answer. Again, I go back to, I think Apple has got it right. I mean, here, it's a software-driven device. We're going to put it out in the entire market and see what happens, and you sell 5 million of them that quickly. If that's not a message to the other handset makers that this might be the way to go, we need to get the hammer out and hit them over the head with it and say, here's the way to go, okay?
Gotcha. Russ, if you got any insight from your carrier's point of view on that?
Well,
it's a tricky situation, I know, for some carriers. But.
We did launch an iPhone, first prepaid carrier to do that. Followed closely by others, and it's something that we felt was really critical to throw into the mix. We're a carrier that started out and has always focused to a large extent on a particular customer class, but when you're a value provider, it's unnecessarily limiting to stay too focused on that. You want to be dynamic and provide competitive alternatives to the bigger carriers for as broad a swath of consumers as you can. And so we felt that was very important. It's not easy to get some of these devices. It takes, it's a gamble. But we think it's one that pays off in the long run.
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, just add, obviously, the iPhone is an issue for us. We don't have the iPhone. It's an iconic device that customers obviously really like, but I think we have some great devices at T-Mobile, and our customers seem to like them, and we've had to take kind of a creative approach to addressing that competition issue, the fact that we don't have the iPhone. So now we have our Unlocked and Unlimited plan that we just launched in September, where I guess iPhone 4, 4G, 4S, and prior generations will work on our network. So, for the time being, that's what we have to do.
Well, it seems like, that's a great example from a carrier being creative. I mean, you can't get to a device, so you got to be more creative with it. It seems like that's a way, perhaps, for some carriers to still get market share.
It's pretty amazing when you look at the demand that's still there for the iPhone, and the iPhone's been around for a while. But we had the pent-up demand of, we felt like for years that our customers had to make a decision between network or device. And fortunately, we had a lot of customers that waited for the device. But we launched in mid-May, and there was, people were standing in line waiting for the phones. And so it's been a tremendous boon for us. And I think that just lends itself to the future. What's the next device, and are we going to have access to that next device?
Gotcha. I mean, do you guys feel that you want to have the FCC or Congress step in on that debate? I mean, is that a debate that should be commercial, market-driven, or has it gotten to the point where somebody needs to step in and really?
But it took a long time for the market to drive the iPhone to us.
Okay.
So, I think our experience has been that the market's not going to do it.
Gotcha. And Larry, it sounds like that's kind of, I mean, like you said, it's maybe you're to the point now where you need that hammer and to make people move on this.
Maybe a hammer might be too much, maybe a little poke, a prod.
Something like a cattle prod.
But it does something. I mean, it's very interesting as well is that once we offered the iPhone, we saw our other smartphone sales increase just as much. So it was not a case where it was solely this iPhone thing. I mean, there was certainly, like it was said before, it's an iconic brand. Yeah. But it also just increased the awareness of the fact that we have other smartphones. Yeah. And that was very important as well.
There are other smartphones out there?
Yeah, it's amazing, huh?
Good to know. Good to know. I'll look that up. All right. Very good. Okay, well, another thing we want to touch on here before we get too far into this was, a lot of talk from the small guys about moving to LTE. I know it's a lot of carriers here are either actually done it in the process, looking at doing it. I guess I want to get from your guys' point of view, from your carrier's point of view, some of those plans that you guys have for that migration to the next generation of technology. It seems like that's kind of the way to go. It's, not that people are being forced to do it, but it seems like that's kind of where everything's migrating to at this point. And so perhaps you just get some insight if people here may not know what your path is to going to LTE. So I don't know, Larry, maybe start.
Sure. We partnered with Verizon, and it has been tremendously successful for us, and we're very happy that we chose to do it. It has given us the opportunity for 4G nationwide roaming, and in addition, Verizon's been very helpful with our LTE launch at the same time. And, for us, it's very critical because we don't want local and regional, in our customer's mind, a local and regional carrier to be thought of as less than, where, they have less than the other big guy's network, they have less than devices than the other guy's network. So this LTE thing for us is very big because it shows our customers and the market that, hey, we're on a level playing field, and then we can compete with our customer service and other things.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're in exactly the same situation. We're also an LRA participant. We've had an excellent experience with it. It gave us a nationwide offering, and it's been very important to our business plans.
Gotcha.
I think LTE is a competitive necessity. I have no choice but to deploy LTE. And, T-Mobile, we've had an infusion of spectrum in the last year. We got spectrum from our breakup deal with AT&T. AWS spectrum covering several markets, including, I think, 12 of the top 20 markets. And then more recently in our deal with Verizon, that's kind of flowing out of the Verizon Cable Co. Spectrum Co. deal, the divestiture, some people call it divestiture provisions. We're getting AWS spectrum in many markets, I think 15 of the top 25. So that's been a critical catalyst really for our LTE deployment, and it's made it possible for us to deploy LTE in 2013. So.
And we launched commercially in one of our markets. It's not a matter of if, but when. We've announced, I think, that we expect to have 25 million POPs covered by the end of this year. It's staging, and some of it's dependent market by market on the amount of spectrum capacity that you have, and can you move in a fashion that allows you to run your existing business and move up. But, like Josh said, it's a competitive reality. We all need to go there.
Yeah. You guys have brought up kind of with the Verizon deal that the ability to have that nationwide roaming is pretty key for your customers. Even though your customers might not roam, but obviously that's become a huge marketing aspect of it. I mean, how important is when it comes to LTE is having that nationwide presence at this point? I mean, is that do you need to have that from the get-go? I mean, you can't just slowly roll it out. Do you feel like you guys need to have that to really be competitive in the space right now? Is that part of the reason for the kind of the Verizon deal?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary that we have a nationwide presence. And we've even stopped, for years we highlighted the regional presence, and we're the local guys, and we're in these 40 counties. We don't do that so much anymore. We have billboards with the United States, and this is our market, and we're a national carrier, just like the other guys. So.
Yeah, and I would echo that again. As I said, is we don't want them to think we're less than anything else. Yeah. So we want them to just assume, again, as Chuck said, in our market, we're the big guy for our market, right? Everyone knows us. So we want that to say, oh, this is another nationwide carrier. I didn't realize Cellcom is, in Wisconsin and Michigan only. I just thought they were nationwide. And as he said, you have to have it right away because you can't tell customers, just hang on with us. We'll get there eventually. They need to do it right away. But the other thing for us is important is that we build out our core network at the same time on a 4G so that, we think we do it better than some other carriers. So we want to make sure we do what we think we do best.
Gotcha. And now, I know, Russ, for your company, obviously, roaming might not be as big of an issue. I mean, a lot of LEAP customers are probably maybe more local, but I know some do like to travel as well. And you guys have an agreement with Clearwire at some point to provide roaming. How important for your customer base, for your company, is that roaming? Is it similar to what everybody else is saying up here too? Do you feel the same type of thing?
It's very important.
Okay.
We have licenses by markets, and between markets, you've got to have a solution that works for all your customers all the time. And so roaming's definitely a big, important part of the mix.
Has that been a bit of a challenge at this point, though, to get kind of that nationwide presence without getting to certain agreements with other carriers? And obviously, with the 3G, Sprint was a good partner for you guys there.
And voice roaming's done.
Yeah.
Data roaming's the challenge.
Yeah.
And what the public policymakers do or don't do in that regard is important to the future on that issue.
Gotcha. Well, one thing you guys kind of brought up too was the spectrum part of this, and for some of the guys who have some A-block spectrum, for instance, there's some issues with the band class issue going on right now. How much of an impact are you guys seeing from that argument for you guys right now? I mean, do you guys see a positive outlook on that, or is that just going to be you think a long time challenge that's going to kind of hunt for a while? No comment on that. Okay, that's okay too. I mean, it's a tricky topic, I think, at this point to see how that plays. I know CCA has been pushing on it quite a bit too, but that's one of those issues, I guess, that we'll leave it out there.
I think in the near term, particularly on the spectrum issue, I think that we feel like we're okay in the near term on spectrum. But for us, the view on spectrum is, if spectrum becomes available, then it needs to be truly available to us as well as the nationwide carriers. And absolutely the worst thing that could happen to us would be some nationwide auction to where a carrier scooped up the spectrum and we're left holding the bag. But I think the important thing for us is to have small enough blocks to where we can get additional spectrum in our current home service areas. So.
Gotcha. Okay. I know for Cricket that's not really much of an issue for you guys at this point, but the spectrum issue is obviously something you guys are looking at getting whenever you can.
Absolutely.
You need to get when you can.
Absolutely. You want to enhance your assets and continue to expand your network, the depth and the breadth of it. Mm-hmm. So access to more spectrum is critical. Yeah. Interoperability is not as big an issue for Cricket, in part because we don't have any operations in that band right now, but we will in the future, and it may be some time before that issue gets straightened out. Yeah. But it's in play.
Yeah. Now for T-Mobile, obviously you guys, your network overhaul that's going to be happening here, it's ongoing right now. That's a huge project for you guys. You're moving customers from one band to another band, freeing stuff up.
I don't know if I can get the slide up there, but
sure,
I'm not an engineer, so I'll do my best to explain this. But we don't have the luxury that the largest two carriers have of having kind of spectrum that we're not using. So to deploy LTE, we need to use spectrum that's already in use, and that's a challenge. Our engineers are hard at work, but this is the first time that something like this has been done, and it's very complicated. I mean, historically, we have two types of licenses. We have PCS and AWS. We've provided our 2G service in our PCS spectrum, and we've provided our HSPA plus service in our AWS spectrum. And as part of our LTE deployment, we're shifting our HSPA plus, or some of our HSPA plus service into the PCS bands, and then we'll be expanding our LTE service into the AWS spectrum. And it's a complicated undertaking. Tom Shagru, if anyone was at the Fierce Wireless Breakfast the other day, likened to remodeling your house while you're living in it. And I think that's a great analogy. And it has to be done without an impact on customers and without an impact on quality of service. And it's a challenge, but I think we're up for it.
And it's living in a house with 30 million people. That's
Right,
not just a couple
right,
people
yeah.
in there either.
That raises other issues.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody's got to complain at some point when
Right,
you got
right.
that many people involved. So that makes it difficult. I think we're just about on time here. I'm going to leave some time here for. I want to get some predictions from you guys too. Kind of looking forward over the next 12 months. I mean, obviously there's some elections coming up here soon that might impact kind of your guys' work directly in Washington. What's your view, over the next 12 to 18 months, on the regulatory front? What significant topics do you think will pop up? Do you think things will get solved? What do you think 12 months from now, what will we be talking about at this show? 12 months from now, that'll be the big topic, or something that got solved or that's cropped up. What do you guys see as being a challenge probably over the next 12 to 18 months or so? I don't know, Larry, start down there.
I would probably say the two big ones are cybersecurity and privacy. I think those are, as evidenced, recently by 3 or 4 different privacy bills that have been introduced. None of them will pass, but I think it'll just be renewed again next year as well, and something will likely happen. Again, I think too the FCC will step in where needed, where they feel they're needed to do it. But definitely cybersecurity and privacy are the two that.
And how do you see it impacting the wireless space, more specifically for you guys? Do you think that'll be a big impact on wireless?
Possibly. Again, it all depends upon what the regulation or law is that's passed. How's it going to affect us? Again, we've got to be careful that it's not a case of AT&T and Verizon dictating, here's the terms that we'll agree to, and the industry can agree to them as well. Well, it may work for those two, but it may not work for us. So we've got to make sure that when we're out there saying, look, this regulation is going to be onerous if you impose it upon us, that we're fighting it. And the other part of it as well is, the hard part is some of these regulations that they're imposing on the bigger carriers are things we're already doing, so it kind of eliminates sometimes a customer service advantage that we have over them. For example, if they said no more IVR, you have to answer the phone call live every time they call your customer service department. That's a bad regulation because that's a customer service differentiator.
Good point. Sure.
That's a stunning revelation. Yeah. I'm a bit stunned myself.
That'd be interesting right there. If that was a mandate.
First off, I hope we're still the group that's here next year discussing this. But I think particularly if there's a rewrite of the Telecommunications Act, and I think that the person that would be the driver behind that would be AT&T, and I think we would be dealing with acquisition type issues, and I think that's going to be important issues, whether it's properties or whether it's spectrum. I think that's something we're going to be involved with for a long time to come.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think next year for all here we'll be talking about incentive auctions. I think we'll be well into that proceeding and kind of in the weeds on license sizes, technical rules, auction rules. Hopefully, at least. I know the FCC has said that they would like to conduct the auction towards the end of 2014, and I think as an industry we should keep the pressure on them to keep to that timetable. I think other sources of spectrum, federal spectrum, the 1755 to 1780 megahertz band, I think there's kind of renewed progress there. Right now there's testing going on. T-Mobile and other carriers are working under our STA to do testing to see whether there are ways to facilitate government kind of transferring out of that band and kind of temporary sharing. And I think that's another issue that will probably be front and center. And it could be that if the data roaming rule is upheld, which I think we all hope will be the case, we may see complaints filed at the FCC. We may see the FCC working to try and add some teeth to the rule by fleshing out what is meant by commercially reasonable, which is the standard in that rule, and nobody seems to be able to understand what it means.
Exactly.
So, I think we're going to move into a next phase. So if the rule is upheld, I think that's really kind of day one to see how the FCC applies it.
Gotcha.
No, I think that's right. I don't think we'll be suffering for, there will be a shortage of issues to discuss a year from now.
It's good for job security.
And if past predicts the future, a lot of the same thing we're talking about today will be topics of discussion then. I agree, cybersecurity, privacy, 96 Act, potential 96 Act rewrite, or rewrites of portions of the Act will be what's going on, continue to be what's going on the Hill. And at the FCC, obviously, as was mentioned, the incentive auctions, we will be deep into that. And, of course, the spectrum screen is going to be a very interesting proceeding as it unfolds. So a couple of big things get kicked off at the end of this week, and there's a process that we'll be going through, and it'll take a year on some of these issues. It may be a little shorter on others. It'll take longer on still more.
Yeah. Do you guys think a potential change in administration and a more likely change perhaps at the commission could impact? Are you guys kind of waiting? Is everybody kind of holding their breath at this point and waiting? I mean, obviously this week there's some big news coming out from the FCC at some point. But is everybody kind of holding their breath a bit for what's coming over the next 2 months, 3 months from now?
I don't think we can afford to hold our breath and wait. Okay. We have to take what appears to be reality today and keep dealing with that and try to prepare. But who knows? It's
that should be the DC motto. Appears to be reality. I love that. But anyway, sorry. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's hard to know what's real and what's not. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. I know, Josh, at T-Mobile, obviously, you guys have a lot on your plate anyway, so you can't really just sit around and be doing nothing there. But
yeah, I mean, there is a lot. As you were saying, wireless used to be, the FCC used to take a light touch regulatory approach to the wireless industry, and I think that was important in allowing us to grow, but times have changed, and I think we in addition to our spectrum advocacy and other areas where there's a lot of consumer protection issues that are coming on the forefront. Broadband speeds, disclosures are something that the FCC is now looking at. And all of these things create work for us. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think there will continue to be.
Well, it seems like the past 4 years, 3 years, the FCC has had a pretty more aggressive touch than perhaps past administrations when it comes to dealing with you guys. I mean, do you suspect that'll continue regardless of any sort of changes, or do you think that there could be another shift to where perhaps they back off a bit? Chuck or Russ, go ahead.
I think, again, plenty of things have been kicked or are kicking off or underway, and that won't stop because of a change in the administration. There may be some changes in tactics necessary. Process may change a little bit one way or the other, but there's a lot. It's funny. In political Washington, there are changes at the tops of things, but there's a lot of Washington that goes on day in, day out, career staff folks who keep things moving.
What's that?
I think the timekeeper got us.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry. We'll be wrapping up here. So, anybody else think any sort of changes might be coming in the next couple of months? I don't know, Larry, if you got any thought on that?
Yeah, I just go back to, regulatory has trouble keeping up with the pace of change, and that's, I think, the reality of that is that there's no such thing as an off season anymore for us. I mean, it really is, the legislature may be out of session or something, but that doesn't mean the work's not getting done, as was said before. And I think it's more than ever we need to be vigilant about that. And, I think Steve maybe had mentioned it before, but, we probably can't do one Capitol Hill day a year anymore. I mean, it's going to have to be much more than that now.
Yeah, good point. Chuck, anything on that?
I think we cannot expect somebody else to be the standard bearer for us. We got to do it ourselves. Okay. And I know from having worked with AT&T during the 96 Act, they're going to have a legion of guys there. It's going to be 40 or 50 guys. They're going to be hitting every congressional office every day. And, if we're going to compete, we're going to have to compete. So I think we've got to make the commitment to be to our issues and to bear the standard.
Gotcha. Well, great. Well, guys, obviously, I think we're almost out of time here, so I want to, if everybody can try to join me in thanking our panel members. I thought you guys did a great job. Appreciate so much the insight on that. Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for sticking around as well. Appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you very much. And if you just stay seated for a while, we'll try to wrap this up. It was some very sage, wise counsel you just heard there from especially the last few points. It's going to be an uphill battle. And I can certainly assure you that we will remain vigilant. We will remain proactive. We're going to serve you, represent you, whether it's on the Hill, the FCC, the White House, in the media, great communication media space for this industry. We're going to be there, hopefully, with a united voice. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, participants on the panel. Right now, it seems like we just kicked off things. It was a couple days ago, but it's now time to close this CCA's 20th annual convention. But before you do, if you'll spend just a few more minutes with me before you speed to the exits, There's evaluation forms on your chair, and we're going to give $1,000 away to the person that's in this room that's filled out these evaluation forms just in a few minutes. And so get your evaluation form. I don't know if that means if you guys have filled them out. I don't want to take you out. See, look here, Chuck this is a real pro, I tell you. He knows exactly what's going on. It's Chuck and you. So while you're filling out the forms, and just remember that this is really critical to us. We do look at this information. We catalog the information, and the events committee takes every thought and every recommendation seriously, and hopefully we're going to improve our offerings because of it. So while you're filling it out, let me touch base on a couple things. One, our next event, the Global Expo event, will be in a place called New Orleans, Louisiana, April 17th through 19th. The event the committee is already starting to plan the event. Matter of fact, we're well down the road. We're looking for speakers now. If you get a call from one of the committee chairs on one of the breakout sessions, or if you want to be a speaker, then you call the events committee and tell them you're interested. We're going to have a full exhibit hall. Even though it's an expo show, it's going to be a technical show, more focused on technical issues, probably a few more breakout sessions. So be sure to mark your calendars, 17th through 19th April. And of course, next year's convention will be back here in Las Vegas. 2013 annual convention will be in Vegas, and it'll be at the Cosmopolitan. And I think a really nice property also. This has been a phenomenal place, and they've done a great job for us here. I always encourage you to get involved in CCA, join a committee, hop into the debate on the policy issues, come to D.C., help us interface with your member of Congress, House, Senate. Got plenty of things for you to do in Washington, for sure. Are we about ready with the tickets? Everybody's gotten their tickets? Okay, everybody, I think we're trying to collect the evaluation forms. And let's see if we can get this wrapped up here, because it'd be nice to have just a little of that replacement dollars for what may have been left at the blackjack table or on the craps table, right? Okay, Pat and Susan are right back here taking the